the legendary, iconic hip hop legend, will join us along with Terry Jervis and have a good conversation about hip hop. I can't wait to talk to Chuck about the impact that hip hop has had on Black culture, both good and bad. We'll talk to him about that and a lot more. He's in town for a reason, and we will celebrate that as well. My next guest is a member of the City Council in D.C., the District of Columbia. His name is Robert C. White, Jr. Councilman, welcome to WVON. I'm happy to have you on. We've been watching Mayor Bowser on for the last couple of weeks, just talking about this engagement with our federal government. Obviously, the president has his eye on certain cities. D.C., Washington, D.C. is one of them. Chicago is one of them. I just had Mayor Brandon Johnson on with me. We didn't get into that, but I'm sure we will at some point. Can you give me a feel for what your constituents are saying, how they feel, and what we should expect moving forward?
Matt, I appreciate you having me. And I'm glad you all are paying attention to this in Chicago. Most residents are feeling really uncomfortable because you have military, federal officers, some of them with masks, not, identifiable badges, so you don't know who they are. They're snatching some folks up without answering questions, usually ICE related, it seems. And some folks are saying, look, all of us want to be safer and feel safer. But I think what they recognize is that part of the federal strategy, part of the president's strategy here is provocation. So these actions, when you violate people's rights, when the president says, rough these folks up, it's going to provoke a reaction, and I think the city is nervous that that reaction will come and the president will use it as an excuse to be even more heavy-handed.
Give me an idea of the status of D.C. in terms of public safety before all of this happened. Of course, we have heard the mayor, the president's description and his characterization of not only D.C., but every other city that is ran by a Black person. What was the reality of it? I mean, look, the reality is what it is. We're in Chicago. Crime happens. Yep. Crime exists. We know the root reasons behind crime and why it exists in cities like D.C. and Chicago. What was the reality of the state of public safety and crime in Washington, D.C.? And I agree with your constituents. As in Chicago, everybody wants safer streets, and welcome anybody who wants to help in that regard. Were you guys at that tipping point in D.C. where crime was out of control and people didn't feel safe walking up and down the streets, or is the president exaggerating?
No, the president is exaggerating. That's why he characterized instead of using facts. So let me start with the facts. We are at a 30-year low in crime in D.C. right now. Violent crime has dropped 26% just from last year. So clearly the things we're doing are working. Clearly the president's characterizations are politically motivated. And as you just intimated, of course, when the federal government cuts the housing budget, cuts the health budget for mental health services, you're going to see more issues, including homelessness and crime. And the president and Congress hijacked our local budget in the middle of our fiscal year. So they're causing an issue, blaming us for the issue, and not paying attention to the facts. And that is unfair. But what's important to other places, and you all get this, is the president said he's using this as a prelude to do it in other places, named Chicago, L.A., New York, Baltimore, all with Black mayors, all Black-run cities, and all of us, I think, moving crime in the right direction.
Talking to D.C. Councilmember Robert C. White, Jr., sharing some of his thoughts about his predicament. He and his colleagues, the mayor, we know what President Trump has tried to convince America about D.C. and what he is attempting to do. What is he attempting to do? And he has mentioned Chicago several times. Brother White Jr. is here to talk to us about his constituents, how they are feeling in this moment. What are your long-term concerns, right? Because I think we're all kind of speculating like, all right, what is the president up to? Because we know the president. We know that, when he does something like that, there's a bigger grab. He's either doing this for distraction, which we've speculated about as far as Epstein files and some of the shortcomings of the big, beautiful bill that people are going to realize in due course. Or is there something else that you're concerned about?
Well, it's both. It is a distraction. And when Congress comes back into session and continues to demand the Epstein files, then we should expect more chaos. But if we've learned anything about this president this year, it's that we have got to take him at his word. We cannot afford to continue to say, oh, he's exaggerating. So when he told us from the White House briefing room that he's going to do this in other states, believe him. And as a lawyer, I can tell you what he is attempting to do, and this is not, broad speculation. He is attempting to roll back federalism, essentially states' rights. He wants federal control of the country, which goes against the very principles of democracy. So anyone looking at what's happening in D.C. right now and saying, oh, that's too bad for D.C., is missing the bigger picture. This will become the precedent. So he already told you he's going to Chicago, he's going to L.A., and we know that there are no adults in the room. So the folks who should be stopping him and putting up guardrails are not. So everybody needs to be alert, attentive, speaking out. Elected officials from across the country have to be talking about this. And even Republicans, the amount of money the president is spending from the defense budget to mobilize guards from, 6 states now, to deploy them, lodge them, pay them to stand around in D.C. with nothing to do, is wrecking the national budget.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talk about our defense budget, Republicans just feel like, that should just be funded, infinitely. And then we look at some of the, some of the money. And it's going to be interesting to see, Councilman, if the president invests in D.C. in some infrastructure ways, right? Because, he's like, we need to make it's going to be beautiful. You just wait. When I'm done, it's going to be beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. So that suggests some beautification, some infrastructure funding, and making the city look better, right? It should. It's the nation's capital. Yeah. This type of investment should have been on that level in terms of beautification. That should have been happening, and I hate to say this, under previous administrations. D.C. should be looking amazing. And with money coming from the federal government, that is our nation's capital, right? It shouldn't. I even feel bad that Trump is in a position to try to make some changes to Washington, D.C. I'm talking about physical, optically make some changes and then be able to take credit for it. Well, we should have been doing this years ago.
That's right. And I'll tell you the uncomfortable truth, the worst roads in D.C. are the federal roads. The most invasive species, places with the most litter, are the federal places. D.C. has its house in order. We always can use more help from the federal government and other partners, but you've got to want to be a partner.
My brother, Councilmember Washington, D.C., Robert C. White, Jr., please keep us updated, my brother.
I will. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate having you on here. All right, guys, let's take a break.